Welcome back, everybody. If you caught Monday's full-length episode, you know that we spent some time reframing what anger actually is. And today for the midweek reframe, I want to give you something concrete. So a simple practice that you can use the next time anger shows up. Before you react, before you suppress it, in that in-between space where the real work actually happens. It is a short, practical, something you can actually use. So let's go.
Welcome to Reclaiming Me, a trauma-informed podcast helping women with complex PTSD heal the lasting impact of childhood attachment wounds from parents and caregivers, so you can finally release people-pleasing and perfectionism and learn to trust in relationships, beginning with the one you have with yourself. I'm your host, Cindy Payne, therapist, trauma specialist, and a woman who has walked this path both personally and professionally.
All right, everybody. I want to walk you through what I call the anger decode practice. This is a 4-step process that takes maybe 2 minutes in real time, but it can actually completely change the trajectory of how an anger moment unfolds. So step 1 in this practice, I'm calling it the notice and name. The moment you feel anger rising, pause long enough to name it. Not just, I'm angry. I want you to get a little bit deeper than that. Get more specific. So, am I frustrated? Am I hurt? Am I feeling dismissed? Am I scared? Am I a combination of some of these questions? Because anger, what we know for sure is that it is often a secondary emotion, meaning that something else is almost always underneath it. And when you can name it, it gets you closer to the root. And what I would add to being able to name it by asking about frustration, hurt, dismissed, scared, etc., is can you do a quick body check? So where are you feeling this? Is your chest tightening? Is your jaw clenching? Is your stomach all knotted up? Are your thoughts moving really fast and you're just feeling like you need to come to a conclusion? If you can tune in to a body check, I think you will find that your body is already telling you something. So let's let it speak, please. So when you can notice what's going on in the body and you can name accurately what it is underneath anger, I think you're clear to move to step 2. And step 2 is asking what this is about. So not the surface thing. Go one level deeper. And I'll give you an example that I used in the full-length episode on Monday. Fast forward to our last night in Greece before we sent our boys back home to Texas so that my husband and I could finish the trip and celebrate our 25th anniversary. And I had been watching the boys, be on their phones in the evening time specifically because that's when all their friends were waking up back home. And it was our last dinner together. And it was a beautiful trip. We had many, many, many moments that I will never forget that took my breath away. But one of the things that had bothered me all week was being at the dinner table and just, engaging in conversation in the beginning, but then kind of fizzling out. And then I would notice that they would pull out their phones and they would be on their phones, sometimes even under the table. And I just was feeling all the grief. Knowing that this was the last big, kind of together moment for all 5 of us before everybody disperses in their own direction. And it's getting harder to take longer vacations with the boys because they are starting to have girlfriends and internships and study abroad programs and summer school and jobs and just all the things that emerging adults start to do as they should because they're forming their own pathway in life. But I was really, really extra aware of this. And again, it was going back to my expectations. And that's when it just all came out sideways. And I was crying. And what it really came down to was I was sad. I was sad. I was grieving. I'd had a lot of expectations. And because of a lot of the wheels coming off the bus early on in the trip, and with my son being sick and all of that, it just felt like, oh, this didn't go how I'd pictured it in my mind perfectly, but also it was attached to something that I learned to dismiss early on in my childhood because I was never allowed to express my disappointment, and especially not when my grandparents were doing something for us, like a vacation, because then I was told I was ungrateful. And so that's a huge shame trigger for me. So there's something deeper there. So ask what this is about, not the surface thing, but can you go one level deeper? So if I'm angry about something and my husband said, "What is this actually about? Is this about this moment right now, or is it about a pattern?" Well, in the moment, if he would have done that, I probably would have said something snarky back to him, like, "Don't therapize me." But, if I was in a good regulated place, I could say, this is touching on something older. This is touching on something from my attachment history. This is a wound that's been poked. And that doesn't mean that the present situation doesn't matter. It absolutely does. My boys needed to put their phones away. We had agreed early on in the trip, when we're at dinner together, the phones need to go away. But understanding the full picture helps respond from a more grounded place rather than the more reactive one, which is what happened, which is when I came unraveled. So yeah, moving to step 3, if you can ask what this is about and identify, then I think you'll be ready to identify what you need, which is step 3. So again, anger is almost always pointing towards an unmet need. So is it safety? Is it respect? Is it to be heard? Is it to be seen as a priority? Is it to have your experience validated? What is the need underneath this anger? So getting clear on that is what makes it possible to actually ask for something rather than just react. And so in this example, I was able to kind of pull it together, dry my tears, find my words, and articulate to my kids and my husband how I had been feeling the whole time and why it was really important that they hold off on being on their phones. And I wasn't trying to police everything or micromanage, but I just wanted that last connection with them before they headed off. And when I could articulate it in a calm way, they were able to hear me and they were able to be like, "Mom, we had no idea. We didn't know that you experienced that in your childhood. That must have sucked." And I was like, "Yeah, it did." And so it actually ended up being like a beautiful teaching moment for the boys because they got to see me and that kind of wounded child part of me. And then they got to see the repair. So finally, in step 4, choose your next move. So you get to decide in that moment what to do with the anger. So do you need to take space first? Do you need to write it down? Do you need to have a conversation? In this moment, to speak or not to speak, maybe to sit with it a little longer. And Harriet Lerner is very clear that timing matters. So speaking from the peak of anger often produces more heat than light. Sometimes the most powerful thing that you can do is wait until you're grounded enough to say what you actually mean rather than what the activated part of you wants to say. And so this was an oopsies for me in the restaurant, but I don't beat myself up about it because I was overstimulated. I was overtired. My boys sensed something was wrong with me. And when they sense something is wrong, they start poking and they won't let up until I communicate. And again, that's something that we're all working on as a family is like owning our own stuff and like not taking responsibility for each other's emotions. Right. But it didn't all come out perfectly. And so had I had to do it over again, I would have excused myself from the table. I would have gone to the bathroom. I would have cried a little bit. I would have gathered my thoughts and my words and come and sat back down. But that's for next time. Right. So yeah, that's the practice this week. And let me run through it again. So notice the anger, name the emotions that are going on, ask what it's about, identify the need, and choose your move. So that's 4 steps, even though it might have sounded like 5 just now. It's about 2 minutes if you're not super dysregulated. And it's a completely different relationship with your anger. So try it out and let me know how it goes. And on Monday of next week, we're going to be going deeper into the relational dance. So what happens when you start to change your steps with anger and why that's both necessary and uncomfortable. So until then, take great care of yourself and I will see you back next Monday. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for spending this time with me today. I hope you leave feeling a little lighter, a little more grounded, and a little closer to trusting yourself and your inner experience. If this episode resonated with you, please follow or subscribe so future conversations can meet you when they're needed. And if someone came to mind while you were listening, consider sharing this episode with them. That's one of the ways this work reaches the people who need it the most. You can find me on Instagram at CindyPayneRooted, and you can also visit me at cindypayne.com, where you'll find all episode links, blog posts, practice updates, and a free people-pleasing style quiz designed to help you notice your patterns with more compassion. And remember, every small step towards healing, self-trust, and presence matters. You are worthy of this journey. Thanks, everyone.